Video will go over the satellite tool, the satellite button here at the bottom. And this naturally is a focus of our entire system and company with looking at satellite imagery from multiple years from now or into the past, and also from different satellites and different ways to look at it. So once we have a field boundary selected, which is just as simple as clicking twice, so the first will be red, and then the blue will actually focus that field into what exactly we want to see. Then I just hit into the satellite button, and I can view different scenes from the past. In some areas we can go back even into the 80s, but most is within the last 10 years. And some satellites are accessible further back. Landsat goes back way many decades back. Sentinel only a few years, and some of the other ones like Aster can only go back a few years too. And there's others that will just depend on that. High resolution imagery might be more only in the current season until there's more access, or you had access to it from a previous season. So much will depend on when and where and how and what type of satellite imagery there is. So I'm going to go back to June 1st here, and I'm going to actually go back and look at imagery from last year. Not much goes on during the winter naturally in this part of the world, which is North Dakota. So I'm just going to go I'm going to go to August or September 15th. And by the type of satellite, I'm just going to look at Sentinel for this. Now, if I want to actually just look at imagery within the focused area, I can, but I'm just going to look at the map extents. This means I can look at imagery further out and see if there's issues, say there's clouds or some other thing in there that is off. So that will depend. So once you have your dates, you just click. This will search through whatever is in this area. I'm going to specifically look at this June 20th, 2016, since I know it's an okay image. It's a little early, but it does show vegetative growth. So as you see here, there's multiple different colors and patterns in the field. This time last year, there was a lot of water and rain, and you can see these are different channels of water that are filled for drainage. And different colors mean actually different things. So what we're looking at here is the raw imagery from the satellite. We haven't analyzed it yet to get those patterns and those zones that are needed for more scouting and precision ag capabilities, or exporting it into another software. And if I zoom out, you can see it on a grander scale of what the raw imagery actually shows. So the more thicker and heavier the vegetation there is, and it even depends on what type of crop it is, it reflects sunlight differently. Since we are looking at the infrared wavelength, depending on if there's crop growing or not, or if the rows have closed, will determine on some of the patterns you see. For instance, these blues are either more of a late planted crop. They could be preventive planted crop or just not at all, or the rows haven't quite closed. Most of these blue ones are either say sunflowers, or they could even be soybeans. Most likely a lot of these blue fields are in this area. Now the red here is most likely going to be wheat, since it has a faster growth stage, so the darker the red. These actually lighter red ones are canola. So it just kind of depends on your area. Most of the time, say in the corn belt areas, in late June and July, the corn is going to show darker red, and the soybeans would be more of this lighter red. Now come into August, the corn would actually be a lighter red, and the soybeans would be a darker red, since the vegetative mass is greater, the surface area or the reflectance of light, and sometimes different crops turn. So this was later in the season, and this was, say, wheat, which this is. It might turn back to a blue because the crop is not reflecting light, because it is not green. It is the crop is turning. So it's one thing to look at that. Now, just to give you a reference of some other imagery, I'm just going to select a later one here. So what this showing is there's clouds in the way. Now if I zoom out more, you can see kind of how this is representative of a certain area. We bring in clouds and imagery with clouds for two main purposes. One is sometimes half of a satellite scene has clouds and half of it doesn't. As you can see over here, there really isn't any clouds, so there's good imagery around here. Now over my specific field that I have focused, there is a cloud right over it. And there's also a distinctive shadow that reflects from that cloud. And so the sun angle is coming from the east here and shining down. And you'll see that very often in this part of the world. But there is good parts you can get sometimes. Popcorn clouds can be easier. And like I said, some of these areas you can see. So it's very important sometimes to zoom out, look at your image, see if you can use it or not. Clouds are a natural part of imagery for anything, even with aerial imagery or drones. We need the sunlight to look at the crop, to get the reflectiveness, to get the right readings, so we don't have skewed data. So I'm going to go back to this June 20th and select this specific scene. And I will just zoom down. As you can see, this was a very clean image on this time. But there is still sometimes little clouds and little patterns. As you can see up here, there's kind of a stray cloud and its shadow. Those are things you definitely want to look out for and make sure you're aware of what kind of imagery you're seeing. Now, one thing that is different, we look at these raw scenes for these purposes. Since there is a lot of good imagery, even when there is clouds involved in satellite imagery, it's one thing that we do different. One thing why we go through this raw imagery as well is others might do the entire scene as, say, an NDVI, and then they cookie cutter out. But as you can see, there's different crops and there's different patterns, and we're looking at changes relative to in the field. So to see those changes relative in the field, we need to only analyze what is in that field and what is that crop. For instance, if you do have one main CLU, but the crop is split into two, say corn and soybeans, you want to analyze just the one type of crop to get the best results. You'll still see different patterns and changes relative to each other, but it could skew how those zones are interpreted and how they actually come out. So that is one difference that we do here at Satshot. We actually analyze just the specific area that we want to. And from here, once I am ready to go, you would go right into the analysis. Now, if I want to clear this scene, I can clear it. But if you want to go into the analysis to actually get the results and see these patterns, it's as simple as clicking on the analysis and selecting the pieces that you want. I will go through this in another video, but I will showcase the exact same image as we have right here.